the UFC flyweight division and what is going on there. Personally, I was stoked when the UFC's flyweight division was brought in because, hey, I'm a homer. Demetrius Johnson was born on Kentucky land. I knew that he would have the opportunity to become flyweight champion. He did. He was the greatest flyweight champion of all time. We have seen fighters be peeled off from this roster. It's real confusing what's going on right now. Fighters getting fired. Shorty Torres, who both of you know very, very well, who competed not just at 125, but could compete at 135 and wanted to compete at 145 at one point. James, you spoke to him. He said that he made that offer, and he thinks that because he made that offer, maybe the UFC was like, you know what, let's start firing some of these guys. It's kind of a weird situation, and it gets weirder.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack from this. How about Jared Brooks coming off a win and gets cut? I guess his contract ran out, so they're like, okay, good enough excuse. We're going to get rid of you. Yeah, it sort of came out of nowhere. Flow Combat was the first to report that the division was coming to the demise. And we see all the fighters coming out and saying, yeah, Jose Shorty Torres, Jared Brooks, Justin Scoggins, Roberto Sanchez, all these guys getting let go. And to make matters so much more confusing, they say that TJ Dillashaw and Henry Cejudo, by the way, that's for the flyweight title. What's going on here? So, I mean, for me, it's like I feel bad for Shorty, especially. I mean, Joe and I both know that Shorty should have been in the UFC a while ago. He beat whoever he could to get in there. And, he kind of described in the interview, the quote that sort of stood out to me is he's like, it was like I was in an abusive relationship. And it's true. He got treated like crap. There's no other way to look at that. This is an exciting guy, a young guy, a guy who's still got a ton of potential. And the kicker is he fought at bantamweight in Titan as well. He fought at both weight classes, won a title in both weight classes, and they're still getting rid of him after one loss. Granted, not a great fight, but you're getting rid of him after one loss. That's bad business decision, in my opinion. I feel for the flyweights. I feel for everyone in the division. I get that it wasn't the most exciting division, but the UFC's to blame for this as well. I mean, there were times when they had marquee flyweight fights that they were putting on the prelims. How are you supposed to get fans invested in a division when you're not showcasing those fights? So, yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation all around. And hopefully, your ACBs, your Ryzen, your One Championships, sign these guys, and they can have a better life post UFC.
Joe, your thoughts on this being a flyweight title fight now? Cejudo and Dillashaw, it seems so just arbitrary to just make, he wants 2 titles, so let's do it. Why? And now Cejudo's saying, yeah, but I'm going to get a rematch for his 135 title. No! This 135 title has already been log jammed for so long. You've had like 4 guys compete for it over the last several years. What about the Marlon Moraeses of the world? What about them?
Yeah, when I first saw the news that the fight potentially is happening, that title fight or the super fight's happening at 125 pounds for the flyweight title, the first thing that went to my mind is TJ Dillashaw is trying to become another champ. He wants to cut down there, prove he can do it, fight, become the champ. Now he's got 2 titles, one that's about to get eliminated, and then everyone has to go to 135 pounds to fight him. But it does clog up the division once again. There are a lot of title contenders at 135 pounds that deserve title shots, and I get the fact that it's going to be Henry Cejudo, who they've always wanted at 135 anyways, right? So he'll get that shot eventually. It is a weird scenario. I think it's absolutely it's sad. It sucks. I would love to know the real reasoning behind why the UFC is making this decision, and I'm pretty sure we all know why. That it's Sean, you and I have talked about this. It's that state of Texas theory. Everything's bigger in Texas. People like bigger fighters, and they don't like small guys fighting. But there's a way to promote it, and you could have promoted Demetrius Johnson on so many different levels. Although there could be a caveat there in stating that maybe Demetrius didn't want to do all that promotion, was happy what he was doing, right? So now he's getting that payday at 1, but the whole division now is getting cut here and there. Shorty Torres should be fighting at 135. Make him fight at 135. The guy's a very exciting fighter, fantastic promotion, but I know firsthand that he was once blocked by UFC matchmaker Mick Maynard, just blocked because he was trying to get in there. He was sitting there like, what else do I have to do? And Shorty's interview when he said, or that social media post when he said what he said, and I knew, I was like, man, the UFC is going to look at that and say, yep, you're done. It's like you can't speak up against them, right? And if there was ever a case for a situation where these boys need a union, here it is, right? They need representation to say, you just can't cut us out like this. Like, what's going on here? But, this is where we're at right now, and I honestly think it sucks. I think it's absolutely terrible. The benefits are hopefully the other associations or promotions, can take advantage of this because you've got now the best fighters in the world available to you at 125 pounds.
James, you reported just before we went on the air that former flyweight Luis Smoka, who I can confirm does like the polka. So that's some John Candy for you guys. But he's returning to the UFC. And I said, wow, they're bringing back a flyweight. And you said, well, let me be clear, it's at bantamweight. And I'm just thinking, man, they have a whole mess of flyweights that want to go to bantamweight and got fired. Guys in their top 15. Did this – okay, so, man, I don't even know how to frame this. I'm so mind-boggled. Good for Luis Smoka. I like Luis Smoka. He's young. He's a good fighter. It's good for him. But are you surprised they brought him back, especially in the middle of all this?
I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why. I think that he was a guy that, it's been well documented. He had a substance abuse problem when he was in the UFC, and that's why he lost a lot of those fights. He just, it was really impacting his training, and he was fighting tough guys. And I think, the UFC was very high on him. You remember when he fought Paddy Holohan in the main event, and that was sort of the pinnacle of his career at that point. And, it really seemed like he was destined for a title shot, and that didn't end up happening, unfortunately. And, he strung together some losses. And I think the UFC said, like, look, take care of your personal issues. We'll keep an eye on you, and we'll see what happens. And that's exactly what he's done. He moved from Hawaii to California. He's been sober apparently since the beginning of the year. He's won all of his fights by stoppage. I think what it comes down to is they wanted exciting guys in the UFC, and he's a guy that I think that they didn't want to let go. They knew how young he was, and they knew that he brings the exciting matchups. It's just he needed to figure some things out. So he figured that out. They're bringing him back. I should mention, too, from the sources that I spoke with, he is going to be fighting very soon. I believe, my sources are telling me possibly that China card next week. He's going to be fighting on that. So this is another short notice thing. And yes, they could have brought up Jared Brooks or whoever to there. But I mean, unfortunately for Brooks and Roberto Sanchez and, a few of those other guys, often they go to decision. They're not guys that are really getting you out of your seat and really sort of captivating it. Shorty Torres is one of those guys. That one I don't agree with. Justin Scoggins, very exciting, but he'd lost 4 of his last 5. That's I can understand that. But I think the reasoning behind bringing Smolka back is just that fans loved him. He's an entertaining fighter. He's cleaned things up. I think they want to see what he's made of, especially at bantamweight where he's not cutting that extra weight.
So if you look at the UFC rankings right now, it's going to be a mess. By the way, they've redone their rankings, so it already is a mess. And I can't even pull it up. I don't think they even have. Yeah, they do have flyweight rankings. Okay. Or they have pound for pound rankings. I don't even know how to navigate these right now. It's such a stark change that my Google Chrome says that it's unsafe to go to. But okay, I finally pulled it up. Number 15. Do you know who number 15 in these rankings are, guys?
Neil Seery.
Neil Seery.
Oh, jeez.
Do you want to know why that's significant, guys? He's not a fucking fighter anymore. Pardon my language. I mean, you all are two respected MMA journalists. I am not. I'm a respected pro wrestling journalist, so I'm allowed to act like this. Neil Seery doesn't fight anymore. Or did I miss something?
You are correct, sir.
You're correct.
Didn't he retire? He retired. And the balls on these guys, the grapefruits on the UFC. Not only is he number 15, he's tied at number 15 with the guy who actually fights. So they could have easily just said, you know what, we'll just omit him from this list. It was a clerical error. It was a mistake here. But there's another 15, so what's the harm? But they didn't do that. Oh, this is such a mess. It is such a mess. And I mean, the way that I see it, hey, Sergio Pettis is hitting the bricks, whatever. Benavidez, you could put him at bantamweight. I'm sure he'll do fine. John Moraga, same thing. Wilson Hayes, same thing. Some of these other guys, they're probably just going to get cut. They'll find work elsewhere. If I'm Bellator, I start a flyweight division tomorrow just to do it. But there's one name that is particularly interesting for a number of reasons. Ray Borg, who has had everything from glass in his face to issues with his child, which I hope get better, but the man has pulled out of so many fights. James, do you think the UFC has mercy on him and has him try 135, or do you think he's done though?
He's staying. 100% he's staying. Mark my words, he will be in the UFC and he will be fighting at bantamweight. Who's his manager? Simple as that.
It's a good point. That's a very good point.
And one thing, I'll bring this up later, but you mentioned the Marlon Moraes thing too. It's kind of funny because Moraes is managed by Ali. Henry Cejudo is managed by Ali. So it's like he's kind of screwing over one client to help another client. That thing's, I mean, it's, the whole thing's just very weird. But to answer your question, yeah, Borg will stay with the UFC. He's beloved by everyone. And despite all his, if it was anyone else, if it was, I don't know who, any random person on the roster, they're gone. But it's because it's Ray Borg and because he's with Ali. I think having Ali, that extra protection, I think will keep him around. And, from what I've been told, anyone coming off a loss is cut. So Brandon Moreno's cut, from what I heard. Aaron Bronstetter posted that yesterday, which is crazy if you think about it. I mean, how, the streak he was on, like how he's out of the UFC, and some of the other guys that have stuck around are, it's just kind of crazy, sort of their reasoning. So yeah, and just I mean, yeah, we're going to see more of it. But yeah, from my understanding is if you're coming off a loss in the flyweight division, you're cut. Doesn't matter who you are. The only exception I think was Jared Brooks, like I mentioned, but like I said, he had a 4-fight deal. The Roberto Sanchez's 4th fight, so they're like, hey, kick bricks.
So as we wrap up this conversation, what does this mean for the other divisions? Because this could have a ripple effect. Dana White says, we don't want to add more divisions. Well, if you don't have a flyweight division, you don't really have an excuse to not add 165 and 175. If you do that, combined with this, you're going to have a lot of smaller guys moving up to bantamweight. I would like to hope that this causes a ripple effect and oversized 135s move up and then vice versa. I'm not convinced of that. But Joe, do you think that this move improves the possibility of adding a 165 and 175 division and scrapping 170?
If Dana White wakes up, yeah. He won't. He's always been one of those guys that's taking a little bit. It takes a little longer to come out and say, "Yeah, we're doing this." I mean, just look at the Ronda Rousey. Just look at when they brought in flyweight. Just look at when they brought in the women's divisions in general. Just look at how long it took for him to put on the Ultimate Fighter with the ladies. There's a bunch of different things that I look at when it comes to this stuff here. Now, the ripple effect was something I was talking to a friend about. Was it yesterday or the day before? In essence, similar to what you're saying, but it goes back to what you and I have talked about for a very long time, whereby I believe the UFC needs to cut their roster big time. They got to start putting on better shows with higher quality fighters, with higher quality fights that actually mean something. So if you're getting rid, it sucks, but if you're getting rid of a whole division, some of them are allowed to move up. Some of the ones at the bottom of the bantamweight division, why don't you just cut them? And the ones that do want to stay, they go up to featherweight. Some of the guys that are at the bottom of featherweight, you don't want them, get rid of them, and just keep going until you've got only X amount of people. First of all, this top 15 thing I've never liked. It should only be top 10. Okay, so top 10 means something. When you're number 14 in the world, nobody cares. But when you're number 10, it feels like you're on the cusp of something. You better protect that number 10 ranking. So, in my opinion, the UFC, and God, I've just been saying it for so long that I feel stupid that I'm constantly bringing it up all the time, but cut the fighters that should not be in the Super Bowl of MMA. Cut the fighters that are not UFC fighters. It just seems like anybody can make it to the UFC. It's not true, but that's the sense that's out there. It should be top 10 only per division. Every fight should mean something. Every fighter should either be trying to crack the top 10 or protecting their position in the top 10, trying to get into title contention, trying to get to number 1 contention, fighting for a title. That's how the UFC should be operating things. But whatever. They're $1 billion entity based on what they've done, but things got to change.